Hi guys, my name is Avix and welcome to Specialization Artillerist Guide Part 2. Part 1 video has earned more likes and comments than I expected, so thank you for your support. In Part 1, we covered what Spec-RD is, how Specialization stat works for Artillerist, and how we rotate skills as Spec-RD, and we also covered skills, runes, tripods. In Part 2, we are going to cover item sets, stats, and engravings. Since your progress in game is very diverse in NA or EU, it is harder to give you advice for your setups. Some of you are aiming for 3x5 engravings and already in 1490, which means you have more stats and you have benefits from Relic gears. And also your supports will get Relic gear, which increases your attack and movement speed. So we'll have to put that in consideration too. And some of you are going to aim for 3x4, 3x3, 3x4 plus 1, 3x3 plus 1, and some might be in tier 2, which honestly is beyond my imagination. I've been in tier 2 before, but it was a long time ago and I didn't even care about engravings and setups. So in order to help you guys, no matter what progress you have, I'm going to make guidelines for each aspect that you have to consider when making your setups. Since item sets, stats, and engravings affect each other, it'll be kind of complicated, but I'm going to sum up and suggest several options that fits most guidelines in the end. So don't worry. First and most important thing, you have to maximize your specialization stat no matter what. So rings and earpiece must give you specialization and you get Spec-Swift or Spec-Crit necklace. Second, you need to consider attack speed and movement speed. If you are considering Spec-RD, I believe some of you are used to being slow, but still, artillerists have terrible skill motions and bad mobility, so this affects your survivability. You can get movement speed, attack speed from Swift, Spirit Absorption, and your support and Relic set Redemption gets you attack speed as well. I recommend you to get movement attack speed from either Swift or Spirit Absorption. That means if you're getting Spec-Crit necklace, you have to consider using Spirit Absorption as your engraving. If your eye level is high enough and you are suitable for getting Redemption set, and if you have reliable support who plays with you and will probably get Relic set that increases your movement attack speed, Spec-Crit with no Spirit Absorption can be your option, but still, I recommend you to get minimum movement attack speed from either Swift or Spirit Absorption. Third, you need at least 55 to 60% of crit chance and one crit damage option. So if you are using Argos set for crit damage and you are planning to stay there for a long time, you don't need any other crit damage option, but otherwise most of you need to consider Keen Blunt Weapon. You're going to get crit chance from crit stat, item sets, firepower enhancement, and adrenaline, and for your information, Precise Dagger, which increases crit chance and decreases crit damage, is a terrible choice for artillerist. You will get 40% crit chance from level 3 firepower enhancement, and you can get up to 15% by adrenaline, and if you get Spec-Crit necklace, it gives you about 15 to 20% crit chance. And you can get crit chance from item sets as well. If you have 55 to 60% of crit chance, it is the minimum crit chance to make your setup viable. In order to make your setup strong, not just viable, you might need synergies that increase your crit chance, meaning that you need Gunslinger, Deadeye, War Dancer, Glaivier, or Striker as your party member. If you get 70 to 80% of crit chance, it is considered optimal crit chance. In this case, you will be strong with or without synergies, but you should not be obsessed with high crit chance. Some people just blindly use everything that raises your crit chance, but it is more important to consider overall value of your item sets and engravings. The last thing is CDR. I will not call this a guideline, more like something you can consider. In part 1, I mentioned that CDR doesn't matter your DPS in Spec-RD, but in order to perform optimal rotation, you need certain amount of CDR for homing barrage and air raids. And the more CDR you have, the more possibility you will get optimal rotation in real raids. This is what makes big difference between Spec-Crit and Spec-Swift. In KR, we consider at least level 9 CDR gems for homing barrage air raids are required in order to perform optimal rotation in Spec-Crit build. And level 9 CDR gems cost about $200, and assuming that gems are much more valuable in your server, very few of you might be fortunate enough to get those gems. For Spec-Swift, 500 Swift plus level 7 CDR gems are enough, and even 400 Swift plus level 5 CDR gems might be doable. So much easier to reach appropriate CDR for perfect combo. The reason why I did not call this a guideline is because I do not think it is mandatory to have this CDR. In real raids, when you get interrupted during rotation, homing barrage and air raids are the first things you have to give up. So I consider this optimal rotation and CDR thing as a way of getting additional DPS if your other setups are in your endgame, or a backup plan for unfortunate situations where you have to quit Barrage mode and you want to keep some of your DPS. As always, damage from your Barrage mode is what matters the most, and I would like to advise you not to be obsessed with optimal rotation. The thing you should really consider is, although it is always a matter of chance, but if you get Swift, you are more likely to get optimal rotation, which is 2 homing barrage and 2 air raids in one rotation. And that leads to difference in damage proportion. Your normal skill damages will matter more, which means your engravings or gems should be more balanced to support your normal skills too. So whatever you choose between Spec-Crit and Spec-Swift, but you have to understand the damage proportion of your build and make sure your other setups fit to this damage proportion. So we have covered 3 guidelines plus 1 consideration. Keeping those in mind, let's discuss item sets, engravings, stats. For Relic sets, you can choose between Hallucination and Redemption in the future. I'm not sure the name is Redemption or Salvation, and I'm also not sure if it is released yet, but it is an item set that gives you extra damage and attack speed. Hallucination gives you 20 to 25% crit chance, which is awesome, but it is considered as least value among Relic sets. If you get Spec-Swift, it is hard to get enough crit chance without Hallucination, which makes you use inferior Relic set. If you have both Firepower Enhancement and Adrenaline level 3, it is possible to get Spec-Swift Redemption, but still, you're gonna need crit chance synergies in your party. If you get Spec-Crit, you can use Redemption set, which is better item set, but you have less attack movement speed and CDR, so you might need Spirit Absorption and you might have to give up some optimal rotations and focus on Barrage mode. Other than Relic sets, I'm not that knowledgeable about legendary sets, but as far as I know, you can choose between crit chance and crit damage. Just be sure to get 60% or higher crit chance. If you have crit damage on your item set, exclude Keen Blunt Weapon from your engravings. For stats, just make sure to max Specialization, and let's move on to engravings. For starters, I want to mention which kind of engraving is valid for level 1. You might have noticed that most damage affecting engravings are 16% increase, but if you look at level 1 effect, it is only 3%, which is below 20% of level 3. So level 1 Hitmaster, level 1 Barricade, something like that is waste of your engravings. Moreover, level 1 Keen Blunt Weapon, level 1 Grudge, level 1 Cursed Doll is just absurd because they have strong debuffs. You only get small part of original effect and you are getting full debuffs. So there are only limited number of engravings that you can use as level 1. For Artillerist, Firepower Enhancement, Barrage Enhancement, Adrenaline are our candidates. For Firepower Enhancement level 1, you get over 60% of your crit rate from level 3, and you still get full damage reduction. For Barrage Enhancement, you get half the amount of damage increase, and you still get cooling removal. For Adrenaline, you get about 1/3 of effect by level 1. Since as on Spec RD you need crit chance badly, and Firepower Enhancement gets you 15% more crit chance by raising it from level 1 to 3, which is just incomparable from other engravings. Therefore, you will need level 3 Firepower Enhancement in most cases. So you have only Barrage Enhancement and Adrenaline for level 1 candidates. If you get Barrage level 1, it means your normal skills will get more effect from your engravings. If you get Adrenaline level 1, it means your normal skills are missing a full level 3 engraving, which is Barrage Enhancement, so your damage is more focused on barrage damages. This is the moment where damage proportion that I mentioned earlier matters. If you get Swift, your damage proportion of normal skills increase because of CDR and optimal rotations. Therefore, getting level 1 Barrage Enhancement would synergize. And you might probably need Hallucination to get suitable crit chance, and this is the one of the most popular setup in KR called Spec-Swift Hallucination. If you get crit, your damage proportion is more focused on barrage damages, hence level 3 Barrage Enhancement is better. You can choose Redemption as your item set, which is superior to Hallucination, and we call this build Spec-Crit Redemption. This is why item sets, engravings, stats are all linked together. Other valid level 3 engravings for Spec RD are Grudge, Kindblunt Weapon, Hitmaster, Curse Doll, Adrenaline, and Spirit Absorption. Spirit Absorption increases your movement attack speed, so I recommend it only for Spec-Crit setups. Adrenaline is OP as hell, but needs some micromanagement where you have to use your shield during your W in Barrage mode. Sometimes it is a pain in the ass and also very expensive in KR, but worth the struggle in terms of damage. Curse Doll is also expensive but useful choice. Although it has debuff that kind of matters to Spec RD who takes a lot of damage, it is straight 16% and affects all kind of your damages. One other downside of Curse Doll is that it is additive to other power increasing effects such as Adrenaline, which makes it little bit lower than 16% increase. Hitmaster is comparatively inexpensive engraving with no debuff, straight 16% increase. It does not affect your Awakening and Bleed rune, but still a great choice in terms of price and value. Kindblunt Weapon is always a good choice if you don't have crit damage increase and you have over 60% of crit chance. If you have crit damage in your Argos set and planning to use it for a long period of time, Kindblunt Weapon would not be so effective, but otherwise it is always a great option. Grudge is the best in terms of damage, and I know that there was a controversy around Grudge in NA or EU, but in KR it is considered mandatory engraving for DPS. And I believe that it'll be the same for your server sooner or later. However, Spec RD is a special case where being able to take more damage means you can deal more damage as well. I believe for Spec RD only, taking out Grudge is a valid choice, especially when your build makes your damage mostly focused on Barrage mode. Okay, so my guide about item sets and engravings stats are over now, so based on my guide, I'll give you examples for valid setups. For 3x5, Grudge or Hitmaster or Cursed Doll with Kindblunt Weapon, Spirit Absorption, Firepower Enhancement, Barrage Enhancement, Spec-Crit Redemption would be a strong setup. If your level is high enough and you're planning to keep your eye levels high, Grudge would be the best choice. If you're planning to start raids in their appropriate level, Hitmaster or Cursed Doll might help you tank a lot of boss attacks. Another 3x5, which is in fact 3-3-3-3-2-1, would be Grudge, Kindblown Weapon, Hitmaster or Cursed Doll, Firepower Enhancement, Adrenaline Level 2, and Barrage Enhancement Level 1 with Spec-Swift Hallucination. It is more of a balanced setup, which you deal a lot of damage through normal skills and barrage skills together. 3x4 plus 1, Grudge, Kindblown Weapon, Adrenaline or Cursed Doll or Hitmaster, Firepower Enhancement, Barrage Enhancement Level 1 with Spec-Swift Hallucination. Same style with the previous one. 3x4, Grudge, Kindblown Weapon, Firepower Enhancement, Barrage Enhancement with Hallucination, or Crit Chance Argus set would be fine. I recommend Spec-Swift more, but if you can overcome being slow, Spec-Crit would be stronger. If you have crit damage set, you can replace Kindblown Weapon with hopefully Adrenaline or any other damage affecting engravings such as Cursed Doll or Hitmaster. 3x3 plus 1, I suggest Grudge, Kindblown Weapon, Firepower Enhancement, Barrage Enhancement Level 1 with set item that increases crit chance, and Spec-Swift. Also, if you have crit damage set, replace Kindblown Weapon with Cursed Doll or Hitmaster. 3x3. You have so many choices. In this stage, playing better will matter much more than your setups. Grudge, Firepower Enhancement, Barrage Enhancement with either Spec-Swift or Spec-Crit would work fine, and you can replace Grudge with Spirit Absorption if you are Spec-Crit and want some mobility. Grudge Firepower Enhancement, Adrenaline 2, Barrage Enhancement 1 with Spec-Swift is fine too. These are just some examples that fits my guidelines, and you are free to make your own setups as long as it fits my guidelines and you consider damage proportions to make it synergize with other part of setup. So, my guide part 2 is over. We covered how we manage crit rates, movement, attack speed, damage proportions, and how they relate to item sets, engravings, stats. Please do note that the important part is to understand and make your setup synergize. In part 3, which is my last guide video for the series, I'm going to cover how to set gems, how to upgrade, and some financial point of view in playing Artillerist. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!